Well, I don't know about you, but I can't believe it's Thursday already. That means tomorrow is our last full day, which is where did this week go? I mean, that's crazy. So I want to give you just a little bit of a heads up about tomorrow, since it's the last session. And interestingly enough, I've talked about kind of a foundation for family, and then we talked about marriage on Tuesday. We're going to talk a little bit more about it and some ramifications of it today. Haven't really talked about parenting or family in general. That's what we're going to do tomorrow. So I want you to know that if you've been kind of looking for, what am I going to do with my kids? What am I going to do with my grandkids? What does God say about strong, healthy families? That's going to be tomorrow, okay? And it's a full message, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and give you just a little bit of it this morning as a setup for what we're going to talk about today. One of the things that I was very impressed when I was a young dad, I came across some research by a group that talked about qualities of strong families. And one of the subpoints that was made was that there is a certain custom that strong families all participate in that you and I know as family traditions. That there is something very powerful and strong in a family when something is done over and over and over again. The research I read referred to them as always statements. We always do this on Christmas Day. We always spend Easter with the extended family. We always make birthday, and whatever it is, we always make Arbor Day, deep and profound. You can pick whatever day you want. You create your own day, but there's something about that always statement that really is powerful. And as you've been paying attention this week, I've done lots of things wrong in family, but one of the things that we really did kind of nail down was some of this always statement kind of stuff. Matter of fact, whenever I give this part of it, I always yearn for 5 stools where my 5 adult kids could kind of take it from there, because they can still, at their middle age, spit out always statements that we did through the years, especially as it came to holidays. And so if we were to talk about, hey kids, just break into the always statements about Christmas. And my daughter, being the oldest, she would start off. She would say, we would always get our Christmas tree the day after Thanksgiving, okay? Because back then, that was the earliest you were allowed by law to begin celebrating Christmas. It's out of control today, isn't it? I mean, 4th of July's over. Are you prepared for Christmas? And you start seeing the ads, everything so early. But back then, we always bought our Christmas tree the day after Thanksgiving. And then Jesse, my oldest son, would take it from there. And he'd say, you know what? We would always buy a Christmas tree too big to fit into that Christmas tree stand. I mean, it was tradition, right? And then Jeffrey would, on the other stool, would add on. He said, we'd always hear Dad say words he never say any other time of year, except when he's putting that Christmas tree in the Christmas tree stand. And that's sad, and my only defense is, it's tradition, all right? And, we had so many things, and looking back, I think I had a very pleasant childhood, and my parents weren't totally expressive, but they really got into Christmas. And I remember that we had Christmas, and boy, is this funny to talk about this in view of all what's happening culturally. Records. You're old enough to remember records? Now they're having a resurgence. All my kids have record players now to play. Now it's vinyl. Got to play the vinyl. And I'm like, wow, I got vinyl, stacks of them at home. We called them records. And I remember my folks would have Christmas records that they would play over and over and over again, to the point that I grew up thinking, nobody sings Joy to the World like this particular artist, or no one sings Silent Night like this gospel singer. And we'd put those records on, and they were as beat up as yours. So we'd sit there and we'd listen to, this stuff. And I was so grateful when I asked my folks when they were still living, can I have the Christmas records from when I was a kid? I'm going to play them for my kids so they get this stuff too. And they said, sure, you can have them. And my kids learned it just like I did. Silent night, silent night, silent night, silent night, silent night. Bright round yon ver, yon ver, yon ver, yon ver. I mean, we'd go to church at Christmas and we'd sing it the right way, and my kids are all looking down the aisle. What version is this, Dad? I never heard this before. I said, just go with it. It's the radio version. It's a short one. Just sing it, And they would do it. We just love that. That was so much fun. And, when I grew up on the East Coast, and when Chuck hired us and we moved to Southern California, we left all our extended family back east. And so on Christmases in Southern California in those early years, we would just start inviting other people who didn't have extended family to spend Christmas, and they would come, and we'd have our own created extended family in order to have Christmas. And with when the kids were little especially, we called it Christmas Eve a birthday party for Jesus. And we'd have the cake and the candles, and it was a real rite of passage when one of the kids was finally old enough to read the Christmas story out of Luke's gospel, and that was really amazing. And we had enough people that we would act out the Christmas story. I mean, Joy was Mary, and Jesse was Joseph, and then our little baby Joseph was baby Jesus, and we had enough people in between to be donkeys and camels, and so we just had all of this all set up. It was really great, and it was tradition. We did it every year. Well, our Joseph, not to be confused with Mary's husband, our Joseph is growing up year after year, and he's around 5, 6 years old. And I remember Christmas Eve day, he says, Dad, come here, I need to talk to you. So I said, what's going on, man? He said, Dad, are you going to make me get into that laundry basket again tonight and play baby Jesus? I mean, look at me, Dad. I'm 6. I'm hanging out all over the sides of this laundry hamper. You can't do that, Dad. And I'm there, but son, it's tradition. Oh, Dad. And the more I talked to him, the more I realized he really wasn't reluctant to get into the laundry basket as much as he was afraid some of his friends would see him, and then they would make fun of him as a little baby or something like that. So once I assured Joseph that we would close all the blinds and pull all the curtains and nobody would see him, then we realized, okay, then we're able to pull off the Christmas story, at least for one more year. But the difficulty with traditions is as people grow and people come and go, that oftentimes you have to really shift it. You've got to change it around. And as much as I love stuff that's the same, I'm not a big I love change kind of guy. I love everything just the way it is. And it's hard for me to think about, well, we can't do that Christmas story anymore because baby Jesus is now, 13 and 6'3", and it's like that's a weird baby Jesus. So, I guess it's time to give it up. But there's other circumstances that can come into play that cause the traditions to go upside down too, aren't there? It's not just kids growing up or, somebody going off to college or somebody just not wanting to participate anymore. For the Butterworths, it was 27 years ago now, believe it or not. And my wife of 17 years said, I don't want to be married to you anymore. And in California, that qualifies as irreconcilable differences. And we were divorced. And people always ask, did you see it coming? And I thought, well, kind of yes and no. I mean, we were like what I thought was any other marriage. We had our issues, but, I thought we were working on them. But no, on the other hand, it just really caught me by surprise. And I want to talk to you a little bit about surviving a situation like that. And I want you to hear a couple of ground rules to begin with. First of all, this is not in any way intended to mar the character of my former wife. My goal up here is not to make you think that, well, boy, Bill's an angel, and I guess his former wife is just a stinker. That's not why I'm telling you this story, and I hope you don't ever think of it that way. She's the mother of my kids, and we, try to include her in as many family things as we can these days. My wife, Kathy, has been remarkable in how she's opened up our home to the kid's mom. It's just really, really amazing. So I want you to understand that, and I also want you to understand that I've talked to enough of you this week to realize there are people in this room right now that will identify with this first person, real time, because that's where you are. And I also realize there's an awful lot of people here that would think, this is not for me at all. I have no idea why he's taking a time out of a family series to talk about surviving a divorce or how to, heal up from that. I don't understand. So I want you to stretch with me a little bit, because I don't think you have to stretch too far to find somebody in your circle who is dealing with this, or who has dealt with this, or you even have a sense maybe they're contemplating this, okay? So it's not a judgment on you, but I'm just saying for you to make this as practical as it can be for all of us, I want you to keep this in mind. And in some ways, it's more for you who don't need it than you who do, so that you know what the person that's going through is actually feeling like. I mean, if you're like me, prior to my divorce, I had no idea what divorced people were feeling like. And then I became one and realized, man, I was so insensitive prior to my divorce to people from a broken home. It never even occurred to me to try to reach out and minister to them a little bit more. So you get what I'm saying here? We want to all work together on this and understand from my personal experience as I process what God is saying in His Word, how we deal with situations of this nature. So I know you have a printed outline, so I want you to go to that right now. And you'll see that what I'm calling it is the 3 great needs of a single adult. And that's intentional too. By the time we get done this, wherever you are in family systems, you are by yourself in one way, shape, or form. And so this is for all of us. These great needs apply to every human being that walks the planet. Here's number 1. I need acceptance from myself. I need acceptance from myself. One of the most famous proverbs is Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7. For as he thinks within himself, so he is. As he thinks within himself, so he is. We control so much of how life is dealt with by our self-image, by how we feel about ourselves. Maybe you were a child who was made fun of more than any other child on the playground. The more I talk to people, the more I realize everybody was made fun for something. You were too fat, you were too thin, you had buck teeth, you had big ears, you had 4 eyes, you had big feet, you had stinky feet, you had, you name it. Everybody can go right to it. Oh yeah, I mean, I'm years old and I can still hear, I see Billy Butterworth, he's the fattest kid on earth. I mean, it's just like, whoa. I'm in 2nd grade again, and I'm the world's largest 2nd grader. And it's like, man, you don't shake that stuff if you don't get intentional and try to get beyond it. Kids are cruel. We can just all accept that. If you ever doubt the sin nature, go to daycare, all right? And so we have issues that maybe we've brought into our new family. And we've got, my parents were verbally abusive. They didn't beat me up, but they sure, laid into me, or maybe they were physically abusive, or maybe there was a situation somewhere else that impacted you. You come into this family with a self-image that can be impacted both positively and negatively. And so what we're talking about is we need to accept exactly where we are, because remember, as bizarre and as unlike what you think the rest of Christianity works, God is not up in heaven saying, yeah, I'm stumped too. I cannot figure out how you got into that family situation. It's a mystery. We've huddled up the Trinity. 3 of us have talked about it in depth. We're clueless. We're stuck. That's not God. He knows exactly what's going on. And he knows how to help us get through what we're dealing with. And it begins with, we need to accept who we are. I need acceptance from myself. Now, I'm one of these people, and whenever I say it, I'll get people to say afterwards, yeah, I'm the same guy. I mean, to me, I was born to be married. I was not born to be a single guy. I was single again after my first marriage for 6 years. And those were, to me, 6 long, lonely years. Now, I've learned to deal with it, and I learned to accept what was going on, but I was just a sad sack when it first happened. I mean, I was a mess. In my particular instance, I was, at the time, traveling around, talking to people about strong marriages and strong families. And then, boom, I'm unemployed. I mean, seriously, would you hire me for the couples retreat if I told you, oh, by the way, my wife and I are in divorce proceedings? Oh, great. Can you give some extra presentations? So not only was I emotionally kind of struggling, I was broke. I was absolutely broke. And so fortunately, a dear friend of mine called me one day, and he said, Bill, I heard about this situation. I'm really sorry. Listen, you need to be writing. And I thought he meant about this situation. I said, well, I appreciate that. And hopefully someday I'll feel like I'm at the place where I can write about this and help other people. But right now, I'm just really a mess. And my friend said, well, yeah, in the future, you need to do that. But I'm talking about you can make money writing right now. There are people that have a story to tell who don't know how to write, so they hire people like you as a ghostwriter or a collaborator. You can help them. Call your agent, tell them you want to ghost, and I got a hold of my agent, and all of a sudden, I started to have these ghostwriting projects, which at least put food back on the table again because I was starting to make money. So it was the first year that I was single again, and I was hired by a guy that brought me into a wonderful little town in the Midwest where instead of the normal routine, and again, I continue to ghostwrite even to these years, and if I'm going to write your book, I want to get together with you face to face and just talk to you and me. Well, this guy had built what he called a dream team. He had like 8, it happened to be all male, 8 men who sat in a circle and discussed what this guy's book was going to look like. And he was whiteboarding it, and and I was the secretary who was writing all this down. I was going to be the ghostwriter for this. So it was in February, and I remember we were supposed to be there for 3 days, and the first 2 days, we did really, really well, and we got together on the 3rd day, and our host came in, and he said, boy, I apologize. I cannot believe it completely escaped my mind. I was so excited about this project that I forgot, and we're all like, what's he talking about? He says, guys, today is Valentine's Day. We're going to make this short so you can all go be with your Valentine. Now, of the 8 guys, 6 of them were local. There was me and this other guy, Randy, from Texas. I was still in California at the time, who were out of town. So our host says, hey, look, you two, I'm sorry, I don't mean to exclude you. And I'm sorry you can't be with your sweetheart on Valentine's Day. And all this stuff is just making the hair on my back stand up. And it's like, I want to slug this guy. What are you talking about, a Valentine? Who, you think everybody's got a Valentine? Or what are you, a communist? And he says, okay, look, you two, take care of what you need to by phone. But look, right here at the hotel you're staying at is one of the best restaurants in town. You go, it's on me. Try to make the best of this. So Randy and I go back to the hotel. Randy says, let me go up and call my wife, and then I'll meet you downstairs, and we'll go to this place for dinner. I said, okay. So I go up to my room and just kind of stare at the phone, Mr. Sad Sack. And then it's time, so we go down, and Randy and I, I'll never forget it, we walk up to the hostess, and we say, table for two. And the guy is like French or something, and he goes, oh, monsieur, tonight all tables are tables for two. And Randy looks at me, and I look at him, and we realize, oh, no. We are the only two guys asking for a table in the whole restaurant. And the hostess, or the maitre d' or whatever he was, the French guy, he says, oh, we take no reservations tonight. We just move you through as you come along. So just give us your name. We will seat you. So we end up getting seated, if you can believe it or not, in the best table in the whole restaurant. It's got this kind of log cabin lodge feel to it. And there is a massive fireplace. It's like as big as this wall. And we get seated right in front of the fireplace. And all the real couples are looking at us enviously, like, what's the deal with the two guys getting the fine table by the fire? Well, I'm a mess. I'm sitting by the fire, sweating like a pig, because the fire resembles a small home ablaze. No sooner do we sit down, this cute little girl comes to our table with a basket of long stem roses and holds one out, and we're there like, no. So they go away, and then the waiter comes and, can I take your order? And we have a lovely Chateaubriand for two tonight, and he's talking all this stuff. Well, Randy, my Texas friend, he's really having a hard time with this. And he just blurts out, I want a steak. I want the largest steak you have. I want it raw. I want it bleeding. I want it to moo. I'm talking a steak. I mean, he's going as macho as he can. And I'm thinking, that's a good idea. But it really wouldn't be good when he looks at me and says, ooh, I'll have the same. So I said, you have prime rib? Yeah, all right, I'll have the prime rib. And Randy, he wants it rare. He wants it raw. He wants it bleeding. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Randy. It was horrible. It was one of those deals, where it's like, can you bring the check with the entree kind of thing? And so we're gobbling up, both sweating like pigs, no conversation. It was just horrible. Pay the bill. He goes to his room. I go to my room. In good Christian maturity, I fell on the bed, put my head in a pillow, and cried like a baby, saying stupid things to myself like, everybody else has a Valentine but me. I'm the only person who doesn't have a Valentine's tonight. And I mean, it was pathetic. And I learned that, you know what? God has not given me any guarantee that I'm ever going to have a Valentine again. And one of the things I learned that night is I promised God, I promise you, I will never spend Valentine's Day alone again. If I've got to, and I did, it's Valentine's bowling night. It's a giant Monopoly game, board night. It just gets some people together and say, look, instead of sitting in your room feeling sorry for yourself, reach the point where you realize, I can accept who I am. And that's a very big deal. And I wrote that phrase down because that was the phrase I needed to meditate on for 6 years. I accept who I am, including being single, for God loves me and God can and will use me. I can accept who I am, including being single, for God loves me, can and will use me. Now, 27 years ago, divorce was still a little bit more of a hot potato theologically than it is now. And so there were plenty of people who were my friends who were writing my obituary. One of my dearest friends said, well, you're done ministry-wise, that's for sure. I think I can get you on at Nordstrom's in the shoe department. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're my friend. What are my critics going to say? What are my enemies going to say? So, when we understand how volatile situations can be, perhaps that's a little more helpful. So, number one, I need acceptance from myself. Number two, I need help from others. I need help from others. Galatians chapter 2, verses 2 and 10. Bear one another's burdens. Let us do good to all men, especially to those who are of the household of faith. As a single dad, I was overwhelmed. I remember thinking when it first happened, holy mackerel, I thought raising 5 kids was a challenge enough when there were 2 adults in the room. Now that it's 1 versus 5, talk about overwhelming. I don't know what in the world I'm going to do. Well, the first thing I should do is reach out for some help. That's why God created carpools. That's why God made babysitters. That's why God made best friends who can maybe help you just get a little break from the gang, go out and have a cup of coffee in a quiet place, and then come back and face all that noise or whatever. I got all these guys, 4 growing boys, eating refrigerators whole, spitting out the hardware, and it's just, what in the world? What am I going to do? And I realized I need help from those that are around me. And help is as broad as I can make it. When I did actually write about this, ultimately, I wrote a book called When Life Doesn't Turn Out Like You Planned. And I did a whole chapter on friends around us. And then I did a whole nother chapter on another way to get help. And that's professional help. That's a counselor, a therapist who can help you make sense of what has happened and how to do your very best to make sure it doesn't happen again. And learning from all these people, getting help from them is very, very significant. So, some of you know me, and you know me well enough to realize, yeah, I can see you in this mode for sure. I really shut down, and I began to tell myself all these dishonest and liar kinds of statements, like, you know what? I think I can fool everyone into thinking I'm still married. Look at me. I live in California. I can travel up to Cannon Beach, or I can travel to, Chicago or Miami, or give the speech and just say, yeah, the whole family is at home. Now, I'm not lying. The whole family is at home. My wife doesn't happen to live where we live anymore, but, I'll just keep it the biggest secret in evangelical Christianity. And people were calling, and I just wouldn't take anybody's calls. It was back in the days of the answering machine. Remember the cassette tape answering machine, And I'd sit there, and I'd listen to their message, and I'd hit erase. And I'd hit another message, and I'd hit erase. So I don't want to get into this with anybody, because I don't want anybody to know. I was ashamed. If you think people that are going through difficult times are just rugged individualists who have no remorse, it's like, get a clue. This is breaking our hearts. So finally, one day, a very good friend of mine who lives in Phoenix, Arizona, called, and I let it go to the voicemail, and you can hear them on that kind of machine as they're leaving the message. And he goes, hey, Bill, it's Gary. Haven't talked to you in a while. Just checking in to see what's going on. If you get a chance, maybe you can give me a call. And something hit me that, okay, I got to go public at some point. Gary's one of my dearest friends who is a very compassionate person. If anybody understands, Gary will understand. And I picked up the phone. I said, Gary, Bill, there you are. Where are you? What's going on? I said, well, you better sit down because I think I have some news that you aren't going to be aware of. I said, okay, what's going on? And I explained to him my situation. And for some reason, Gary kept focusing on one part of the story. He kept saying, wow, so are you still out speaking? I said, well, no, I've canceled all my gigs, and, I need to kind of stay home and heal up. Okay, yeah. And I'd share a little more of my pain, and he'd say, so you're not going anywhere? You're just staying home? And yeah. And I'd, share a little more of my brokenness, and And he would say one more time, boy, so you're just sitting there, huh? And I said, yeah. And I remember I got off the phone and thought to myself, well, that didn't go very well. I'm pouring out my heart, and I'm doing it to the human daytimer. All he's cared about is my calendar. Not going anywhere, huh? Hanging around. Yeah. What kind of friend is this? Well, 24 hours later, I found out. 10:30 in the morning, next day, knock on my door. It's FedEx with a plane ticket to Phoenix. And Gary calls and he says, did you get the FedEx? He said, yeah. And he said, and this is worth writing down, nobody should go through what you're going through by themselves. Nobody should go through what you're going through by yourself. If God has smiled down on you and your family's in a great place today, can you still write that down? There's somebody in your circle who needs you because it's not going all that well for them. So Gary says, okay, come on. You're going to go out to visit me at Phoenix. My wife, Linda, is going to go up to Colorado to visit one of her sisters. So we're going to be bachelors for a few days. Let's do bachelor things. Let's play golf. Let's eat ribs. Let's raise our cholesterol. Let's be bachelors. And I'm there. I am so into that. That sounds great. And I took his ticket and I flew to Phoenix, and it was so therapeutic. It was so good. And it was like, and here's another thing that's very significant that I didn't realize until I was in that. I didn't need Gary because I needed somebody to answer all my questions. I just needed another person that I could talk to, even if they responded in silence. It wasn't about answers as much as it was just another person that I can talk to, that I can be with, who just accepts me as I am and deals with, boy, not only is he divorced, he's terrible at golf. So it's the last night. I'm supposed to fly back to California the next day. I'm staying in his guest room, and I've literally just gotten into bed. He knocks on the bedroom door, and he opens the door, and he's like a little kid. He's like hopping up and down. Wasn't this great? And I said, yeah, Gary, you're amazing. This was just fantastic. He said, yeah, I thought that was cool. He says, and you did everything we wanted to do. I said, yeah. He said, well, listen, you go out tomorrow afternoon. Before you leave, you want to do one more thing? It's going to be really cool. I said, well, you haven't let me down so far, Gary. What do you got in mind? He said, well, here's the deal. We're going to get up at dark 30 tomorrow, and we're going to drive to the base of Camelback Mountain outside of Phoenix. And you and I are going to climb Camelback Mountain to watch the sunrise over the city of Phoenix. It'll change your life. Are you up to it? And I'm thinking, okay, let's see. My exercise program consisted of, taking out the trash every Tuesday night, and bringing it back in Wednesday morning. But I said, sure, why not? And I immediately knew I was in trouble because he started throwing in all this gear that we were going to wear the next day. Loose pair of shorts, a tank top, hiking boots, and my favorite piece of equipment, a belt that Velcroed around you with 18 water bottles on. And I remember dozing off to sleep that night thinking, tomorrow I'm going to die. So sure enough, in the middle of the night, we get up, we get all dressed, we drive to the base of Camelback Mountain, and I am to discover that this is like a cultic ritual in the city of Phoenix. All these people are already lined up to make this hike. Now, if you're from Phoenix, I mean no disrespect. This is what a person from Phoenix told me, and I think it's very accurate to describe the city. Phoenix is the city of the newlywed and the nearly dead. There's a lot of really old people in Phoenix. And I get in line between a bunch of them. And I start going up, and I realize I have behind me this super tanned, tattooed, chain-smoking, bow-legged, cussing like a sailor, blue-haired lady who does not like the pace that I'm keeping because I'm too slow. And she's saying if I can delete all the, get out of the blankety-blank line, you blankety-blank. I never saw such blankety-blank in all my life. Get the blankety-blank. And she's blowing smoke on me and flashing her tattoos. And I mean, it's like, man. She is one angry lady. So we go up not very far, and I'm wasted. I'm gone. I mean, I'm like, Gary, go on, save yourself. On the way back down, come get me. And if the varmints haven't gotten me, tell my kids I love them and bury me here. He said, come on, you can do it. I said, no, I can't. I said, you can do it. I said, no, I can't. He said, you can do it. I said, no, I can't. And then he said the coolest thing. He said, okay, look, how about if we slow down and climb this mountain at your pace? I think you need to get up to the top. And just being cynical, I said what I felt was true. Well, if we do that, we're not going to see the sunrise. And he said, that's all right. It's more important that you get up there. And I mean, this metaphor is just filled with, good stuff. I had drank all the water in all 18 of my water bottles. And he just kept sharing with me his water bottle. And he would take it at my pace, and we'd wait for a while, and then we'd take it again. I mean, talk about a friend sticking closer than a brother. And, I mean, God in skin. And we got up to the top of the mountain, and sure enough, I was a prophet. We did not see the sunrise. We essentially had Phoenix at high noon going on. And I remember I looked out, and it really was. There was a totally different perspective of seeing the city from that point. And I remember saying, Gary, I don't want to be corny, but while you're up here, would you just pray for us? And I said, especially, would you pray for my kids? I'm so afraid they're going to get all messed up because of this. And I just don't know what to do, and I need God's help in the worst way. And Gary prayed a very brief and simple prayer. We said amen. We gave each other man hugs, and we went back down the mountain. And honestly, to all humility aside, I go down a mountain really well. Good pace, nice clip, how you doing? Very conversational. It's a beautiful thing, going down a mountain. And as you have heard dozens of times before, I'm sure, life is that mountain journey. Every person in this room is on that mountain somewhere right now, today. Some of us are on the way up, and we feel with each step it can't hurt worse than it hurts right now. And the truth is, it will hurt a little bit more for a little longer. But some of us have gotten to the top, and we have a whole new perspective. And this is where God's will comes in. It's that I needed to go through all the pain represented by climbing that mountain in order to see. And then some of us are on our way down. Life is good. How are you? Conversational. We're smiling. We're just keeping a good pace. It's really good. We're all on that mountain somewhere. But the point that I want to focus on today is that I needed Gary's help. I needed him to be there by my side because I couldn't do this on my own. My experience talking to a lot of single-parent groups is that it's not a badge of pride and honor to say, I'm a single parent. A lot of us are embarrassed by it. There's some shame because of why are you? What happened? What'd you do? And it's like, it's difficult for single parents oftentimes to reach out and ask for help. That's why I'm saying some of us that are in a better place today, keep an eye out for people that are struggling with like this. Maybe the very best gift you could give them is, a night out without the kids while you watch them and see what's going to take their kids to the, concert or the park or the skate park or whatever, and just give them a little bit of a break, okay? Number one, I need acceptance from myself. Number two, I need help from others. Last one, number three, I need healing from God. I need healing from God. It's really by design that I started by giving you the whole little warm fuzzy about Butterworth Christmas traditions. Oh, they act out the Christmas story. Oh, they get a Christmas tree together. Oh, that is so cool. Well, then all of a sudden, not everybody lives in the same house anymore. And is this a Christmas Eve with mom or a Christmas Eve with dad? Is this a Christmas Day with mom? Is it her year to get the tree? Is it my year to do the... And all of a sudden, all that was tradition is totally upside down. And there's a steady theme here, folks. I am a mess. I am absolutely a mess. And I remember, like it was yesterday, having the kids with me, and I'm in the living room, and I needed a drink of water or something. I go into the kitchen and come upon my kids in the kitchen saying, I don't want to go in there and talk to him. You talk to him. I don't want to talk to him. He's a mess. What am I going to say to him? Well, somebody's got to go in there and talk to him. Go on in there. I don't want to go in there. I mean, how pathetic is that? And I just added layer upon layer upon it. I'm saying, okay, kids, let's face the facts. This is the first Christmas where we're all kind of in different places. I'm going to make an announcement, and I want you to hear it. We are not celebrating this year. No Christmas tree, no lights, no decorations, no gifts. I want to remind you, I had a professor in seminary that's posited that Jesus was not born in a stable. He was born in a cave. This is going to be a cave-like Christmas. Rocks. And my kids are like, Dad has completely lost it. You know, he's going berserk. Christmas in a cave? Poor Dad. I don't want to go out there and talk to him. He'll liable to take something else away. We already got a cave Christmas. I don't want to talk to him about anything else. So, in my pain and brokenness, yet hypocrisy, I made sure that we would go to church every week. And so it was the Sunday before Christmas. And I put all the kids in the van, and I said, all right, let's go to church. And the pastor was a very close friend of mine. I mean, he had walked me through this whole thing. I had sat in his study and cried gallons of tears. And he just patiently walked me through this. And you know, having ministry in my life, as I drove to church that Sunday, I thought, boy, what's Ed going to speak on this week? I mean, how many ways can you tell the Christmas story? You know, I mean, and you got to have a different angle every year, right? Chuck texted me back in December, Swindoll. He said, well, I just gave my 57th annual Christmas message. It's like, how do you do Christmas 57 different ways? All I can think of is you just pray the congregation is dying off, and you can use something from year 3 that nobody remembers because they were infants. So I go to church, and I'm thinking, I wonder what Ed's going to do. So the kids are all in their classes, and I'm sitting in the back row. And as anybody that's gone through the loss of a family member, things hit you in different ways at different times. Like we start singing a Christmas carol, and all of a sudden I'm weeping into the hymnal. Oh, we used to sing this as if this was a special song, you know, and you know, the offering. Oh, I remember the time we did the thing with the offering plate, you know, and I'm just bawling like a baby in the back of church. So we finally get through all the bad memories of the Christmas service, and Ed finally steps to the pulpit, and he says, has this been an especially difficult Christmas for someone in our flock? And that church was smaller than this group here. And I'm thinking, duh. And then, as only a pastor can do, I sense that someone is going through a difficult period right now. Is that true? And it was like on cue, the entire congregation goes and zeroes right in on me. And I'm like, I'm the one with the soaking wet hymn book to begin with. Yeah. And he says, So I struggled this year to figure out exactly what Christmas message to give. And I remember that when Jesus was just a little bit older, there was a verse that Luke quoted from the Old Testament that talked about the ministry that Christ would have. And he opened to Isaiah 61, verse 1. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. And you may notice if you're following along, I left out that key middle phrase. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted. Is there anybody who's brokenhearted here in our flock today? Well, I'm making noise now. I'm weeping so hard. And he said, if you're brokenhearted here today, this verse is for you. Baby Jesus came to bind up your broken heart. And the way our little church was set up, that instead of just a couple of sections of steps, the whole front was steps. And they built a little platform to even out the steps right in front of the pulpit. And they put a life-size manger and a little plastic baby doll to be baby Jesus, and they wrapped him in a blanket and surrounded by hay. And Ed came over in front of the pulpit right by the manger, and he said, I don't want you to literally, physically get up and do this, but I want you, if you're brokenhearted, to come up here and put all that heartache in the manger. Because when baby Jesus came to earth and then eventually died, he died to bind up your broken heart. And I did it. I'm not usually a real emotional guy, but man, I was so into it. I just, in my mind, took my broken heart, put it up there, and it felt better immediately. I mean, people say, how long does it take to get over? I said, well, I don't know. I don't know exactly how to do that. And I know that day is when it began. That's when the healing began. And that day home in the van, a glorious moment for my kids. All right, let's stop and get a Christmas tree on the way home. And let's get out in the garage and get all that stuff, and let's set it all out. And so real close to Christmas, we finally got the decorations out. And probably like your house, we have one of those miniature nativity scenes, creche, whatever you call it, you know, made out of wood or you know, some sort of material. And we set that creche out on the coffee table in the main room. And when I took that little baby Jesus figurine out and put it in the, I mean, I got all choked up again. It's like, baby Jesus come to bind up my broken heart. And we left the cave, and we had a joyful Christmas. And then a week later, on New Year's Day, which is the day we usually take everything down between bowl games 19 and 20, boxing all that stuff up, and I come to the little nativity scene, and I think to myself, I can't put this away. I can't put this away. Where am I going to put it? Well, I knew immediately. You know, in my pain, I didn't have trouble sleeping at night. The kids exhausted me, so I slept like a baby every night. I mean, some people talk about insomnia and just tossing it. That was not my issue. My issue was waking up every morning to see that what used to be a mate of 17 years next to me in bed was not there. And look a little further over, and a nightstand that used to be overflowing with books and magazines was bare naked. And I thought, that's where we're going to put the nativity scene. So that every morning when I wake up and I roll over, before I feel sorry for myself, I look and see, there's baby Jesus. He came to bind up my broken heart. And I'm better today than I was yesterday because he is beginning the process of healing me. And he can do the same thing in your life. He can do the same thing in your brokenness, whether your brokenness is about your marriage or something else completely. The brokenness of a lost job, or the brokenness of bankruptcy, or the brokenness of, you know, cancer, or the brokenness of a wayward child, or the brokenness, you know, how am I going to cope with all this? You need acceptance from yourself. You need help from others. And you need healing from the Lord. So let's bow our heads and close our eyes. And you know I don't have to give myself a grade on this because this was all about how I, to use Renee's excellent terminology, how I took something that was catastrophic and tried to turn it into something that was redemptive. So my grade will remain to be seen. But with your eyes closed and your heads bowed, if you are dealing with something where you just felt like it touched a nerve today, no one's looking around, let me just pray for you without identifying you by name and ask you if you would like prayer because you're dealing with something. Just put your hand up real quick. Yes, yes, yes. God bless you. Yes. You can put it back down. Yeah. How many would raise their hand and say by that, I want God to use me in the life of someone else I know who could really use help from somebody else in life right now? Would you put your hand up? Oh, great. Bless you. Bless you. Lord, thank you for healing us. When no one else could, you did. I pray for my brothers and sisters in this room, many I know who are dealing with this exact circumstance. I pray that you would bring them comfort and healing and encouragement in difficult, dark days. Help them to realize you are here to help heal, and you will take good care of them. Lord, I thank you for the way you worked your way in my life. I thank you that you brought Kathy into my life 22 years ago, and I know that that's not the guarantee that everyone, after they've become single again, will meet somebody else, but that's the way you handled it with me, and I'm very grateful for that. For all of us, as an individual, may we realize the significance of self-acceptance, of accepting help from others, and working on the healing that only you can provide. Lord, we pray that this morning was a significant morning in the life of even just one person. It was worth it all. We love you, Lord. You've done so much for us. We are so grateful. We pray all this in Jesus' strong name. And everyone said, amen.